Okay, what is up, guys? Back at it again with another episode. So this time we have two guests and they work together. They created a game, got millions of downloads. It's gonna be cool. We're going to chat all about it. But first things first, I'm going to let them introduce because you already know who I am. I'm not going to talk about that. So introduce yourself, guys.
Okay, sure. My name is Scott Mulligan. I'm one half of the Black Vein Productions team. I kind of work on the story end and more the design aspects of the game, and that's pretty much who I am.
Hey, I'm Matthew Ventures. I'm the other half of Black Vein Productions, and I focus a lot on the engineering side and design as well. And I try to help. Scott's an amazing writer, and I try to do editing to make it look ship-shape.
Awesome, guys. So usually what I do is I ask all the people who join here, like join on the show, I ask them how they started with game development. The reason for that is because a lot of people, as you already said, Matthew, you plan to start your own YouTube channel where you're going to teach people game development. You're going to see that a lot of people think that you need to go to college to learn how to create games. Like there is no other possibility. They see people doing that on YouTube, but you know how it goes. So I'm going to ask you guys, how did you initially start with game development? How do you started learning and so on and so forth? And then we will go and shift towards how you created your game and all the good stuff.
I think so. The first project, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first project we did together was in high school.
Yep.
So I knew Scott from middle school or earlier, and we tried to collaborate on this big RPG game, and we completely failed because I think the scope was just way too large. And so with our first mobile game, No Stranger, we made it much smaller, and it was essentially just a conversation between two people, yourself and a non-player character. And I think focusing on that and just learning the basics was a really good start for us.
Of course, one of the main issues I see people do, and you will see that as well, is that people like start learning game development today. In 1 week they're creating their first person shooter game, trying to combat Fortnite. So that's a big issue when it comes to that. But where did you did you learn from YouTube tutorials? Did you learn from books? How did you initially start with coding?
So my coding was primarily through YouTube. I watched a lot of YouTube channels like Derek Banas or David Banas.
We all started with him.
Yeah, him. The New Boston. There's this guy named Bucky. I learned coding with him too.
Yeah.
This was before Brackeys existed, but I would say now that Brackeys is out there teaching people how to make games specifically with Unity, man, there's so many great channels to learn development. And maybe Scott could speak to what spawned his interest in writing and editing as well.
Yeah, of course.
I may have gotten started on the programming, which for me was kind of it's more and more accessible these days for an aspiring programmer, especially with videos like Brackeys and stuff like that. But maybe he could speak to more of the fuzzy skills side.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott. Then we will continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'd love to talk about fuzzy skills all day. Pretty much, I started out actually screenwriting, so I wrote screenplays for television, movies, that kind of thing. And
Really?
constantly in screenwriting, there's like a barrier. So you have a bunch of people who you submit query letters to, kind of producers, people like that, in order to get your screenplay produced or made, really. And I just got rejected. I mean, I was probably rejected, honestly, over 1,000 times, probably more than that. And I was just getting very frustrated with screenwriting because, and with films in general, because you need a whole crew and you need all these people. And then Matthew came to me and was like, and obviously we had done little projects in high school, like he said, but in college he was like, oh, why don't we make a game together? You could write the story, I'll do the programming end. And initially I thought, oh, that's a neat little idea, I guess so. Like I didn't think much of it. But after really working on it, I realized the power of games where we could take this thing that just Matthew and I make, two people, and then send it out to millions of people. Like, and you know, the reach is unlimited, especially with mobile games, because almost everybody has a phone. So that was kind of the impetus. I just always loved telling stories too. I think that's where that came from for me. And there's so many great, like Matthew said, so many great YouTube channels on game design, whether it's Mark Brown or Joseph Anderson, or, you know, there's so many that it would take a while to name. But yeah, that's where my initial interest in writing came from.
So you basically only do writing and game design. You're not involved in programming. Matthew is the one who is involved in programming, right?
Pretty much. I mean, if I look at the code, I think I would make more mistakes with it and make more trouble for Matthew than would be needed. I do little programming. I like Game Maker and that kind of thing. But so Matthew's pretty much entirely the programming side of our
And
team.
there's actually one other or maybe two other things that Scott does that's really important. The first being he's actually our community manager. So Scott is the person who, for almost every review on the Play Store, he's responded to them, he's talking to them, and he's the one who's in charge of kind of ordering all the things we need to do, keeping them in track, and telling me essentially what I need to work on first. So he does that. He also works a lot with the audio, and he did directing as well as acting in our game No Stranger. So No Stranger is a story about this person you meet, and actually it has a lot of live action elements where we did real filming in real life. And so Scott plays our titular character in that.
That's really cool. You're basically doing like customer feedback, which is also one of the most important things that I talk about when I mention game development in general. When you want to create something, what I advise people to do, and we will come back to that when you guys start talking how you got to 1,000,000 downloads, is where people make a mistake when it comes to creating games. They start creating a game, they build it, but they don't think about the audience part. So in the end, they have a finished game, but nobody knows who they are, what their game is about. And then you hear crickets in the App Store. Nobody's downloading the game. So what I say to people, like, if you want to create it, like, start a YouTube channel, start a Facebook group. Like the guest I had yesterday, he created a game, he published it on Steam. He promoted it via his Facebook group. Like, he recorded devlogs, posted there, and that's how he got wish lists, that's how he got pre-sales, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's a really cool thing. And another cool thing is that you exactly know what people want.
Exactly.
So let's get to the game part, as we talked about. But one thing that I wanted to mention, like the other day, as you said, there are a lot of channels. I was surprised the other day, like I wanted to run some ads for my channel to my audience and to other people, and I target, when you use Google Ads, you can target YouTube channels. Like, what I was surprised is I gathered like 60 channels that are game development related when it comes to Unity. But when I started digging a little bit more, only 13 of them are like active, which is like people publishing on a regular. All others were like at least a year was their last, before 1 year was their last upload, which I was really surprised. And yeah, since you mentioned Unity, you guys used Unity to create your game.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about your game. How did you got the initial idea about the game? Because the game is, and I'm going to like quickly share my screen over here just to show, here online that is, to show the game that got, it's called No Stranger, guys, and it got like over 1,000,000 downloads, as you can see here, installs plus million. I like to show that to people because people are skeptical, and they just don't believe they can do it. So I'm like bringing people here and showing that it can be done. So I'm not gonna read the description. You guys can like start talking about what the game is about, and then we can, you know, go from there, and you can share how you got the idea, how you started working on it, so on and so forth.
Sure, I think I could start us off on that, and then go in as Scott. So just when I asked Scott to contribute to work with me on this project, I knew I was basically inspired by this game I played, one game by Dave Justice called Lifeline, which is about talking to an astronaut who's stranded on a faraway planet. I think it might be Mars. And at some point in the game, he says, "Hey, I found this heater, but it's releasing some radioactivity. Do you think I can sleep next to it to be warm tonight? Or am I going to get like a mutation from the radioactivity?" And you actually have to look up, how much radiation will kill you on your phone. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. Like a video game that asks me to actually look something up in real life. Wouldn't it be cool to make a game around that? And so my initial idea was for a game where you're working with a hitman who is going around killing people, and he needs you to kind of look up information to track people down. So that was my rough idea of a story, and I brought the idea to Scott, and he could tell you from there, how he developed it into something I think much more compelling.
Yeah, well, I thought it was an awesome initial idea, the idea of utilizing real life media in order to tell a story, kind of like, I don't even know what you would call that, what genre that is, but So Matthew came to me with that idea, but I kind of wanted to add a little bit more layers to the hitman. I didn't want it just to be just some random hitman. So we kind of developed a story around that, like why is he killing the people? What exactly is going into it? We could talk about spoilers here. I don't care really if
Yeah, there
I
should
don't.
be a little spoiler warning.
I don't, but we encourage you to play it. But we're totally open. It's been out for like 2 or 3 years at this point. So pretty much he ends up being a guy who is in love with this girl, and he's kind of almost hunting her down in a way. And he's taking out the barriers to meeting her. Essentially, is what you're doing. And like her father, who doesn't want them to be together, her best friend, that kind of thing. And so we kind of crafted this whole narrative and combined all the killings together to be one cohesive narrative. And that was pretty much it. And we incorporated Tumblrs and YouTube channels and phone calls and DeviantArt pages and just try it in Google Maps. You have to go to Google Maps and find a direction. As many ways as possible to really make the user feel like this is a real experience and feel like they're actually going through this.
I mean, that sounds really amazing, yo. It's like I feel like it's not similar, but in terms of like Pokemon Go, you need to go out there and do things. Like that's a really, like, you need to interact with the game physically, not just like play it on your phone, which is really cool. To be honest, the first time I see, like people, not a company, but people who created something like this that's interactive, it's really cool. Talk about the mechanics of your game and how the idea of building the game itself. How did you start? What first did you create? How did you want it to go, and so on and so forth?
So yeah, for sure. So when you're creating a narrative story, doing it, which has multiple branches, doing it in like a Microsoft, we try to do Microsoft Word at first, but then that gets really complicated really quickly because you're like, wait, A, B, C, D, A2, A3, and you're like, how are all these branches working together? So I would encourage people to use something like Twinery or Twine, I think it's called, or Twinery 2 now. And what you're able to do is you could visualize, and this is what they use for Lifeline as well, and you could visualize the whole story. So it gives you boxes. So you have like box A, and then you could have it go to branch B, branch A. And then you could see it outlaid, all the dialogue, and you could actually play it as well in Twine. So we actually made the whole game pretty much in Twine as kind of a prototype. And even before that, we made the whole game we do what's called, like, we call it like a paper model in like Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint. And it's just like very rough version of the game. Then we go to Twine, and then slowly Matthew can talk about how he looks at those things and then kind of codes it. Because once Matthew hits the pavement, a lot of things kind of get, I don't want to say permanent, but it's much harder to change at that point later on in the process.
So basically, the Twine, before we go to Matthew, the Twine app
Sure.
is like a whiteboard,
Yep.
online whiteboard that you can like plan your project. That's what you mean.
Exactly. And it's specifically, I
Mhm.
think it was designed for video games. So you put in dialogue, and then you'll have choice A, choice B, and then you could have choice A go to one box, go to another dialogue, and choice B go to another box. And it's much easier to see it like that rather than in Microsoft Word where everything's just very
Yeah.
linear. You can see all the branches. You can see, okay, this is where that started. And it's really cool to see. If you go on, somebody could just like Google like Lifeline Twine, and you'll see like all these boxes, and it's their entire game pretty much out in that.
Awesome. Matthew, take it from here. Like, start your, how did you start developing it from there?
Yeah, so basically I was still really new to programming when I started this project. So a lot of what I learned in becoming a Unity developer, I learned on the road, like while I was developing this stuff. So from Twine, what I did was I actually bought this asset on the asset store called Dialogger, which was made by Tony Cuculuzzi. And Dialogger is it's a resource that allows you to, again, create these branching narratives inside of Unity. And branching narratives, again, is just when you have a conversation, you have two different options that could have their own responses and so on and so on. So what we did was we copy and pasted literally all the nodes from Twine into Dialogger. And so Dialogger worked for some period, but then eventually we did move into our own custom implementation, because a lot of times with programming, when you want to use your own tools, you could always customize it and always make it better if you have the time to customize it. So eventually we did, and we were able to really hone in on what we needed and make it a little bit better.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to also ask you, like, because initially when we started talking, when we arranged this call, I thought that you both are programmers, but now I see that Matthew did most of the coding part. Uh, how did you put everything together? Like, how did you keep track? Because I assume there are a lot of dialogues in the game. How did you keep track? How did you basically laid out the plan to not get lost later on in the middle of the development if you need to change something and not break the code and so on and so forth, which is one of the large issues people have, because the majority of people, the beginners especially, they just start coding without any plan, without laying out how am I going to start this game, because later on when you encounter bugs, and that's inevitable, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, Matthew.
I wanted to say that basically we approached that problem from a number of different angles. So the first one was actually from Scott's side, which is that how do I prevent these nodes from branching into infinity? And the answer was we followed this model, I think it's called the diamond model, where if you branch, you eventually bring the conversation back to the same point. So we have these story beats that every player is going to hit. So for example, you might go to the museum, and he might say, how am I going to break into the museum? And you might say, oh, try this or try that. And then he'll try it and he'll fail, and maybe he'll have to try something else. But eventually you get to the museum, and that's how we can get all the branches to finally link back to one spot. It's really important. That way your game doesn't have like a million different endings, but players still feel like they have agency and can make some meaningful choices. So that's one thing. The next thing is we broke the game into distinct chapters, which helped to just conceptualize where we were along the path. And it also helped to figure out where the bugs are. If we knew there was a bug in chapter 3, we were able to zoom into it a little bit better. And then once we moved, then we had some problems where with dialogue, or it wasn't as powerful as we needed it to be. So that's when we created our own solution using actually Google Sheets. And what was really nice about Google Sheets was we create some macros, some programs within Google Sheets that could highlight the cells red if we could detect there was an issue. And that really helped identify some of the problems which we were having. So we were able to fix some bugs that way. And then last was if somebody encountered a bug in the game, we created a feature where they could send us an email. And so whenever I break the game now, I get like 10 emails, and suddenly we have like a ton of emails in our inbox of everybody complaining about what's happening. And inside that email, I actually include the stack trace, which is what that means is it's a log of everything that happened in the game. And usually from reading that stack trace, I can tell what's going on and where there might be a bug.
Very clever. I mean, it's a very clever solution because, as you said, you get emails again, taking the advantage of the feedback from the customer. So it's a really cool thing, especially when the project is complex. I mean, I'm assuming the game is not large in terms of download size, megabytes, but in terms of a lot of those texts and stuff like that, it's probably huge. So people can get lost quickly, especially if you don't keep track. You can get lost quickly. Now, tell me, like, when it comes to, because it's a multiple choice game, so how does that work? Like, in terms of if I have a task, can I have like unlimited choices, or I'm limited to 3 choices, 4 choices? How does it work?
You're limited. So, for example, at the beginning of the game, Adam will ask you something like, you see a man at the top of the building. He looks like he's about to jump. Do you care if he jumps? And then your options are like, yes, no, why does it have to be a man? And like, just like you want to, you can kind of play around with it. So you could say no, and then you're going to get different dialogue options. And like Matthew said, No Stranger ultimately is a linear game. Even though we have different branches you can go down, you're ultimately going from A to B. How you get there could be very different for every player, but you're going to hit a lot of the same nodes along the way. Yeah, that's pretty much how that works in terms of different dialogue branches.
So basically, your game can have multiple endings, right?
Well, we have like one kind of main ending of the game, and then there's like an ending if you totally refuse to work with Adam and you say, I don't want to work with you. No, I'm out of here. And then he'll just be like, all right, fine. And then he just like boots you from the game or sends you back to the start. So I guess that is another ending, but I don't know. I don't really consider it like a proper ending. So
Yeah, I get the point. Now, how long did it took you to actually create the game? How long did you develop it?
Uh,
We were
that's
for
6
about
months.
2 years.
Oh, well, 2 years, but then also initially
Yeah,
launching
the
it. Yeah.
initial launch.
Yeah, 6 months.
6 months, yeah, and it's for let's say two-man team but one-man coding. That's not a lot. That's not a lot. So yeah, it's totally doable. Like it's totally doable when it comes to publishing a game in a short amount of time, because a lot of people think now this is a mobile game, and a lot of people today are oriented towards mobile, and especially developers want to create mobile games, and I get those requests a lot. So yeah, it's totally doable to create a cool game and a playable and a good game in 6 months. So that's also what I want people to hear. Now, when it comes to, did you had any plan, like while you were developing the game, did you market the game? Did you promote it? Did you just publish it and it got downloads? How did you got to that 1 million mark number?
Well, we got like no downloads in the beginning of when we just initially launched the game for about the first 2 months. And it was a little dispiriting because we had worked so long on it. But then ultimately, we reached out to probably 200, 300 YouTubers, individual emails. So we tried to make them better. Like we would watch their channel a little bit, maybe see what they were doing, try to make it not so generic, because that way we thought they would be more likely to respond. So we got some smaller YouTubers who picked up the game and played it. And then we got like Google Ad. They'll give out like free $100 credits or something along those lines, like occasionally. So we got one of those, and then we just utilized it, made a little video for No Stranger, like a little trailer, and just promoted it for like not a lot of money, but we just got the snowball rolling using that $100 free ad credit. And then ultimately, I think features from there, like Google Play features and all of that, kind of took it to where it got.
Yeah, so I guess an important note is we released this game on Android and iOS, and our Android downloads very vastly exceed that of iOS. And that's because these two different platforms, while you could play the same game on an iOS or an Android device, the way that the algorithms work with respect to how your game's going to be featured and engage with the audience, it's very different. So iOS typically has a sort of a culture where the features are selected by, they have a team of people who go out and the editor team picks out games they want to feature. Whereas Google's is a little more hands off, looking at just the algorithm and figuring out which games have like retention and a bunch of like secret metrics they don't exactly tell us. So Google allows people, it's a little bit more democratized in that sense. And so even if an editor doesn't find your game and like pick you out, oh wow, this guy's a superstar, which nobody had ever heard of us, so it was unlikely. Thankfully, with Google, the algorithm was able to slowly surface our game. And so we would get something like 7th trending in simulation category in Portugal or something like that, right? And like these little features, they do add up, and slowly you start trending from that. So I think we were very grateful for it. And, comparing why we have so many more downloads on Google versus iOS, that's a huge factor.
Yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. I mean, I've heard about Apple doing that. I was like, are they nuts? Like you manually pick the apps that you want to feature. And I mean, it sounds crazy. Like how many employees do you need to have to do that? Whereas with Google, they're everything. They're all about algorithms. I would not be surprised if they did something similar like they did on YouTube now, where they compare watch time and probably they compare the play time of your game and similar games to others, so that if some other game is similar to your game, and you will be recommended and so on and so forth. Now going back, we went off to the downloads and features, but I wanted to talk about the few more features of your game. So because it's interactive, and you said that you use Google Maps, you use this and you use that. So what are all the objectives like that I as a player can do, like in terms of going outside, in terms of do I need to look on the internet for some resources to answer some questions? What did you guys implement when it comes to that in your game?
Yeah, it's pretty much what you said. In terms of, for example, he'll be like, oh, in the early stage of the game, he needs to know where the nearest hospital is. So you go on Google Maps, he tells you he's at like a diner, and you have to find out what direction the nearest hospital is. So you look on Google Maps, you see, oh, here's the diner, here's the hospital, and spoiler, it's east, I think. So then you put in east and you type it in, and then Matthew has made a system in the game where he could either reject it or accept it. which is a little non-gamey because how would he know which direction? But ultimately, we kind of sacrificed the realism of that for the ability to be correct or be wrong in giving him a response.
Well, I do have a fan theory on that one. I think so. Adam, he's telling you to do these kind of challenges all along, and I think all along he kind of knows, like he knows what the correct answer is, but he's kind of like trying to get you to follow his orders, and like he'll give you simple tasks first to do that. But so yeah, Google Maps is one, but then we also leveraged a bunch of cool tricks using other forms of social media. So for example, there's a point where you need to send somebody an email. And what we have actually is on that email a vacation response. So normally when you email someone and they're on vacation, it says, hey, I'm away from the office, I can't respond. But in this case, they'll send you an email pretending like you just asked for the information you're supposed to ask for. So in that way, we kind of pretend like it's a real person you're emailing. Likewise, we have an actual phone number that you can call. And so if you call this phone number, you listen to the answering machine, and we have Ariane, my cousin, who actually did the voice acting for that, and she says, hey, I can't come to the phone, but if you want to contact me, go to my website, and this is the website. And so then you go to the website as the next step after calling the phone number. So there's a lot of little tricks that we use like that to try and make it feel like you're talking to real people the whole way through.
We also have on Google Maps, you can, this is probably one of the weirder ones, where you have to, we found this image inside of the like Brooklyn Academy of Music, and we just loved the image, and there was like some guy, and you have to track down this guy with a beard next to his mom. So you have to go into Google Maps, go to the 360 view, and you have to look for a guy with a beard next to his mother, and then the game like, well, and you could say, oh, he's by the bar or whatever. And it's just some random photo we found on Google Maps that we thought was funny. So we threw that in the game.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of cool features. I mean, just like, and I'm being honest when I'm saying this, like, just hearing you guys talk about the game, what you implemented, makes me want to play it. Like, just that fact, it sounds really cool. It makes me move with the game. I would have to like probably check my health app to see how many steps that I made, and so it's really cool. It sounds really cool. Now, one other thing that I want to, as you said, you implement like a lot of those features. Did you think about implementing any feature like in terms of, because you got a lot of downloads and basically you could have captured a lot of those people, like for the next potential game that you create, did you implement social media in your game? Did you use like that strategy where they can share? Did you use something like a feature where they can, I don't know, maybe enter their email, you can capture it and stuff like that? Did you thought about those things for the next release of the next game when you launch it, so that you like get the initial ball rolling, as you said, for the first one that you got?
I will say that we did a little bit of that really on the tail end, but it's something that we could have done a lot better looking back. So some way, a little bit after, once we had released it, we created a Twitter for our company, and we just added that to the game. And even though it never said like follow us on Twitter, just having the button to see our Twitter in the game got us a few thousand followers on Twitter. So that's really how we've been able to engage with our audience. I'd say primarily we're tweeting at them and they're tweeting back to us. We have also created like a Facebook page, but I think we were really late to do that. If we were to do it again, I think we probably should have made a Discord earlier for our fans to like get together, give each other hints and stuff like that.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think we were a little late to the party on that one.
Also, what I would do is probably put like a newsletter at the end of the game or something like that, where they can add their email. We have it on our website, like the No Stranger website, but I think like it's a little separated from it. So a lot of people probably finish the game and maybe they don't use Twitter, maybe they don't use Facebook, and they're not going to go anywhere beyond to engage with their content. So having that would have been nice. Now Matthew also implemented a cool thing where it will be like, check out this new game, because we try to make it diegetic so that people don't feel like it's an ad. It is, but with like no NSA Intern or new game in No Stranger. So it'll be like support Kindred Spirits, which is like the messenger app in No Stranger, by checking out this new game. So we have that as well.
Yeah, cool, because I see a lot of like Ketchup does this a lot. Ketchup, like as far as in the like past a year or two, I rarely play mobile games. I'm mostly on a PC guy myself. But when I play them, like literally every app that I open from them has those buttons, check out our other games, check out
Yeah.
this game. So that's a really cool feature from them, which I believe initially gets them those initial downloads, as you said, guys, in your case, which got that ball rolling and started bringing in more people. Now, did you monetize your game in any way? In-app purchase, ads, whatever?
Monetization has always been tricky for us because initially we did, so in the game you talk to Adam and then he'll leave, right? Like because he has a life as well, and you have to wait. And if you want to skip the waiting time, we had like you can skip and watch an ad. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people just waited, which is good. That's fine. But then they didn't watch any ads. So we were getting a lot of downloads, a lot of traffic, and nobody was. We had some people watching ads, but we weren't making a whole heck of a lot of money from the game at all, given proportionate to the amount of downloads we were getting. So then we really thought hard to how to change it, and maybe Matthew can talk about like how we changed the revenue model and what we saw.
Yeah, I think so it's hard to ascertain what does it mean for success of a game. There's so many ways that you could evaluate that, but I think compared to other games in our cohort, like other games with the similar amount of downloads, our game performed relatively pretty poor revenue wise. So I think we missed out on like a lot of opportunities to better to better like get money from the game. But you know that's a factor of us learning along the way. And unfortunately, you know, as you're probably familiar, once you make a game, you usually have a big hit and then slowly a long tail, right? And so we did create different ways in order to better optimize revenue. So we did get a little bit more aggressive with the ads, and we did add some in-app purchases using this concept called the Flubberton, which is like it'll give you hints for riddles and stuff like that. But we were a little late with respect to that as well. So I don't think we anticipated we didn't anticipate that too well.
You probably didn't anticipate it will get to 1 million downloads.
Oh, 100% no. And
No.
Relative to what you were saying before about how, you know, thinking about getting some followers for our next game, when we released this game, I don't think we had a clue in our mind that we would get this big or that we would even do another game. So, you know, we were really inspired by all the voices and stuff. And I think that's what definitely contributed to us saying, hey, you know what, let's try to do this again. Let's make another game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so when it comes to revenue as well for indie developers, what really matters is how much your cost per acquisition of a player, how much does it take for somebody to download the game, and then how much are you making per user? So those are kind of your most important. So we've learned a lot. So if there are any indie developers out there, we have failed and learned from and are still learning from it and how to be better at monetization. Because you don't want to make a game that, or at least we don't. Our number one priority is always make a great game. That is always our number one priority. So when that it comes into play, there's always like a divide between trying to make the best game and also trying to make a financially viable game where you can make money and eat. So that's something that I think a lot of indie developers face is like, how do I make a commercially viable game while also making a game that's true to my heart and as good as possible? And that's something we've learned a lot about and how to really properly monetize.
Yeah. I think, sorry, just to tag on to that, with respect to like defining what success means, maybe a few months ago, me and Scott got together and we really thought about our company values and trying to figure out what are our goals when creating a game. And I want to share with you, there was actually 4 goals that we defined to what our goals are as a company. So number 1 is building a great game. So we want to make games that are games that we would want to play and games that we think are different and new. The second,
and these are in order of priority as well.
Yeah, order of
right?
priority. Yeah. So first is making a great game, and then second is having fun and staying friends. So many times during development, we would get into some fights, we'd have some arguments, definitely had a lot of heated discussions. But what always stayed at the top was building a great game. So even if we weren't going to stay friends at the end, that was most important. Then the third one was to make money. We wanted to sustain ourselves, and really it is my dream to be able to make enough money from indie games that I could do it full time if I wanted to. Pretty far away from that goal now, but it's it's always been on our mind because we would love to do this full time. And then the fourth one. So build a great game, stay friends, make money. And then the fourth one is get as many players as possible. So it's really important to us to share our message, to share our voices. Our games often come from a very personal place. A lot of the themes we're exploring, a lot of the experiences are based on stuff that's happened to us. So when it comes to that fourth goal, it's all about getting the message out there. And even if we don't get a lot of money, if a lot of people can experience our game and it could delight them, that's a really rewarding experience nonetheless. So those are our four goals.
And I just wanted I wanted to say what you said, that you guys didn't anticipate and didn't plan for that. So I totally feel you, because I, for example, I studied abroad, so I went away from home to study abroad, and I went when I was 20 years old, and I went in Saudi Arabia to study, but I wanted to study computer science. But what I didn't know is I had to go only to 1 year of English, even though I know English already, but I had to go, that the system is like that. But I went 2 years on Arabic language, not knowing that I don't need it, and 1 year on English, so that was 3. And then I had to go to college. So I dropped out at that point and came back home to create games, to start a business. But I had no idea, I had like $150 in my pocket. That's all the money I had, and I was 23 years old. Like I'm at the point where I need to start making money, contribute to the family. So my point is, I started creating a game, but as soon I realized right away the team that I had, because I live in a fairly small city. It's like 150,000 people here, and rarely you can find somebody who knows something related to graphics, to creating assets for game programming, stuff like that. I realized right away I'm not gonna make money with this game, even if I publish it. I did publish it. It was called Jack the Giant. Was like a hyper casual game. Got only $5,000, but that's when I shifted.
Okay.
That's when I shifted to teaching people how to create games, because I needed money at that point. And while I was doing that, I learned all these things that I just mentioned to you guys. Like, did you capture their emails? Did you try to do social media with them? And that's normal. Like, if you didn't have nobody to tell you that before, but now you learned, same thing happened, Winnie. Same thing happened. Like, I was 3 years in my business, that only then I started getting emails from people. So that's something to think about for your next game, how you can orient and create a game with that in mind, so that you can actually get their email addresses, get their following on YouTube, on Facebook, whatever, because it will help you for your next game launch, definitely. Now, coming back to the monetization part, since your game is story-based, I mean, I don't want to sound like Steam, but steamy, but would you think one of the in-app purchases that you can purchase another totally different story, would you think, would that go, how would that go with people? Because I think those types of games, that would be a good monetization idea. Now, since you created it, what do you think about that?
Well, you should be part of the team, because that's a great idea. We probably should have done that. I think that's a really good idea, is asking yourself, where are people getting value from your game? So we've had difficulties with that in the past. For example, with our new game, we put in an office where you can do all this decorating, you can kind of put all this stuff, which is fun and cool. But when we really think about it, it's like, well, why are people playing? They're not really playing for the office. Maybe we should have gone further into story and buying, and you can purchase some stories, but maybe we should have gone even further into that. So really look at why people are purchasing your game or downloading your game. What are they getting out of it, and how do you monetize that in a way that is fair, and also in a way that is fair and not exploitative? You want to try to avoid getting a reputation as an exploitative developer, just because morally speaking, it's probably not a good idea. And I think as game developers, we have a responsibility to make ethical games with ethical designs. And then in addition to that, I just don't think you even win in the long term as well. If you get terrible reviews, you get a reputation as a really unethical developer, that's going to follow you for years to come. So I think it's, as I said, what you said is 100% accurate. Going back to what you said, find what you can find why people are playing your games, find a fair way, an ethical way of monetizing it.
Yeah, that would be like a DLC on Steam. That's
Exactly.
why I said, yeah, that's what I said. I want to don't sound like Steamy, because, games on Steam are 1,000 DLCs, more expensive than the whole game. But yeah, it would be a really cool idea. Now, tell me your future plans. I see you released another game. What do you plan? Do you plan to push the second game? Do you plan to improve the current game, the No Stranger one? Are you working on a third game? Like, do you have now, I assume now you have the whole vision how you would create a third game in terms of monetization, in terms of like everything. So what are your plans?
I wish we had that vision. I don't think we're that smart. Well, I don't think I'm that smart to like know every single lesson
Like,
going forward.
by the way,
But I get
just
what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah, sorry for interrupting, but like, how old are you guys, by the way? That's something I should
22.
have. And you, Matthew?
Same.
Same. So you're still in college?
Just graduated in June.
And I'm in my last year.
Yeah. So you're working on this full time, or you have a
No.
job?
We worked on the games pretty much like in our part-time. Like I had a part-time job, I was going to school, and I was talking to Matthew at like 12 a.m. On like a Wednesday. So that's kind of how we made do.
Yeah, after my first year of university, I had a summer internship in San Francisco at this company that makes mobile games called Zynga. And basically, every day after work, I'd come home, I'd get the water boiling for my pasta, and then I'd Skype Scott, and we'd have our meeting. Then we'd talk story. We joke around a little bit. I'd cook my pasta, and as I ate it, I would code for like maybe 3 hours, and I just did that every single day. So it was pretty sporadic. Some days I missed it, some days I didn't, right? And I wouldn't say it was definitely not a full day every 6 months. It was very.
No. If you wanted to make No Stranger in a week, be our guest. Like,
well, you probably could, depending on how good you are. I think somebody could definitely do it in a week.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the crazy thing about it, It's like you can make Flappy Bird in a week, right? I mean, people have done it in one YouTube video, and that's what's kind of exciting. It's like, wow, like you could do it. You could.
That's why Matthew and I are going to announce we're going to be making Witcher 4. It's an official sequel, and we're only going to spend a week on it. I think we could.
Yeah, but one thing what you said about like these types of games, I think you said Flappy Bird, people do it like in one video. It is true, but when you need to think and create something new, you spend a lot of time thinking. So that can postpone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm being a little silly, right? Because the thing is, once you know the design, you have an exact idea what to do, of course you can do it, right?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, getting to design.
That's like copying down the math answer from the chalkboard. If you just copy it down, it's not hard at all. But to figure it out and to come up with that's the hard part.
Exactly. Now we shift a little bit away from my initial question because these are things that I should ask at the beginning. But like as I said, it's a casual conversation. I love to get that feeling like we're three friends just sitting over here chatting, but just we don't have a cup of coffee here. But like, what are your future plans? So do you plan like creating a next game? What do you want to do?
Sure. Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. So we actually just made a video, which was our post-mortem on NSA Entry. So
we had a funeral.
We had a funeral for the game. And basically, we've been working on that game for 2 years. So we did about 2 years focused on each game. And now we're sort of in a transition period. I'm currently looking for a full-time job, as is Scott. We're kind of figuring out where we're going to be. And so we're putting in a lot of time into that. Additionally, when I'm in school, my workload suddenly goes really far up. So it's hard for me to get coding done. It's like, we have a little celebration whenever I am on vacation because suddenly all of the coding tasks get done in like a week. And Scott's like, holy shit, this is super fast, right? But for the most part, it's a real slog because I go to a tough school, so it's a lot of homework. Yeah, so I would just say briefly that right now we don't have another project in the works or another project idea. I definitely have a lot of games I want to make, but right now I think my focus is on trying to find a job. And then when I have a little bit more free time, I might go into making some more games. I might be doing some more YouTube videos. One of the things I really want to do is share what I've learned because I've learned so much over these two projects. Really want to make some videos to kind of teach other people that. So that's my plans. And Scott can tell you about what he's up to.
Pretty much same as Matthew in terms of finding a job, but also in regards to the games we currently have, we're playing around with ad campaigns. So what I was talking about previously, we'll do an ad campaign maybe for $100 or $150, and then we'll analyze the data of that campaign. We'll say, we'll look at the metrics, like I said earlier. What was our cost per conversion? What is our day 1 retention? What is our day 7 retention? What is our day 30 retention? How much are we making from each player? Average revenue per user, ARPU. And we look at all these metrics. How long does it take to recoup that initial investment in the ad campaign? It's very kind of business oriented in a way, the stuff we're doing now. And then ultimately we look at it from a creative angle. How do we modify the game in order to change some of these metrics? Because one of the most interesting things about game, maybe this is a little bit of a tangent. I go on a lot of tangents. Matthew could tell you, but
yeah, no problem, man. This is awesome information that you guys share. So continue.
So what you'll notice is that when you bring in 100,000 players into a game, the day 1 retention, day 7 retention, day 30 retention weirdly looks very similar for the game, if that makes sense. It's almost like there's like a mindset that users go into, and it's like a common mindset. So meaning that like if you make a change, you can measure the day 1 retention, how much it changes. And I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but it's almost like in a way, like everybody's the same in a weird way. Like, oh, this, you can almost predict a user's behavior in the future based off of your past users' behavior. So that's something we really look at hard, and we're really looking at metrics now and really trying to understand and trying to, because even No Stranger at this point still makes some revenue, you know what I mean? Which is incredible after 2 or 3 years, and really trying to understand like, oh, wait, what the heck? Like, how is this still making some money, and how can we capitalize on that?
Yeah, that is what I wanted to say right now, but just to make a little joke at the end, you said it's still making. I'm still wondering how Subway Surfers is making revenue after 30 years of being on the App Store. Like, I mean, how? But yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to ask right now. Like, because on Google Play, you can see like the stats, how many people are playing your game currently, the retention, as you said, and talk about the acquisition. How much, because you're paying for that, paying for ads, how much does it cost per user to download your app? And also how many people, because it's 2 years, how many people are playing your game on a daily, like and for, as you said, for $150 for an ad campaign, how many downloads can you get?
Yeah, well, we could talk about all. Let me see if I could bring up, because I want to get you accurate numbers on exactly how much that would.
You can also share the screen if you wish.
Oh, okay. Can I do that? Let me see here. So I could, Matthew and I, it's interesting because we were literally going to go on, go over this data like afterwards, but we can look at it now as well, which is fun. So I guess we could do this. And how do I share my video?
It's in the middle, like, yeah, the share button.
Okay, so I could just share it here.
Too long an explanation.
Oh yeah, I'll try to go as slow. Okay, so do you guys see my screen? Let me exit it. All right, so pretty much this is very basic. So you can see the conversions for each day. So on 10-23, we spent $26.40, and we had 158 conversions. So that means 158 downloads from that campaign. The campaign we were doing is a video ad. We did a 30-second video ad that linked to the App Store, or the Google Play Store rather. And you can see your cost per conversion is 17 cents. It's very good. Or for us, it's very good. Right, so with that,
sorry, and just so conversion means download. So that means basically we spend 17 cents on average for every download.
Exactly. So what you want as a developer is you want your average revenue per user to be greater than 17 cents. So that is our cost per conversion. As you can see, it varies each day, and then we averaged out to around 23 cents. So we only did this campaign for 4 days. Typically, that's very short. And the amount of money we spent, $25, is not a whole heck of a lot. For like we see, obviously some other games are spending a ton. You typically want to do around 2 weeks and around $25 to $50. I would say that's what we've heard from like Google or whatever. That's advice that we've been gotten. So you could see actually we spent only $97 on this campaign, and then you could see we have the revenue from NS and NSA intern for the days. And you can see it varies a lot. Some days you're making 2 cents, some days you're making $10. And the reason why we put NS in here as well, No Stranger, is because the revenue from No Stranger, we've noticed, actually goes up as well when the revenue from NSA intern goes up, or at least that's a trend that we're looking at right now. So we can see right now we didn't break even, and then at this day we break even, which means we make back that 97, and then from then on we view it as profit essentially. So we make $125. Now, there's a lot more to it. This is a really rough breakdown. Obviously, you also get users that are not directly from the ad campaign. You're also getting users that are just coming across your game, just installing it. Generally speaking, we have, I would say, and Matthew could jump in here if I get these numbers off, around 100 to 300 daily active users for No Stranger, and then probably only around 10 to 50, maybe even less than that, 1 to 50 daily active users for NSA Intern.
Yeah. I mean that the breakdown is really cool, and I love that you you put these the columns in red and green, the sheets, which is really cool. No problem. I'm just talking from the business wise, because like a lot of people, as I said, they just approach the game as the game, creating the game. But you also, if you plan to do this, like if you would love to make this your daily job, you need to plan these things as well. This is what I learned in my business. Even I don't create games directly in terms of publishing them, but I have a subscription-based website where I teach people how to create games in Unity, Unreal Engine, and a bunch of other stuff. And I do the exact same thing. Like I think long term. Like I invest now $100 in ads, but I plan to get those $100 back in 3 months because the person will be subscribed. So that's how people need to think, because it's also business. It's as much as we would love only to create games, you need to put food on the table, you need to pay your bills. So you need to think that as well. Now, we didn't talk about your other game at all. So what's your other game about?
Sure. NSA Intern is a game where you play a new intern to the National Safety Agency, who is coming in for their first internship. And what you do is here's the game right here. Some information on it. And you look through people's phones, fake phones, and you look through their messages, all of this, in order to find information of whether or not they're a terrorist or not. And that's essentially what you're doing. Your boss is a little magnifying glass named Glassy, and you go through the game, and it gets crazier and crazier, and you have a bunch of different profiles that you look through.
Yeah, because we only talked about the popular one. It did got a lot more downloads. So this one is released how long did you release the second game, the NSA one?
Well, this game, it's been a weird cycle because we actually released it before we finished it, which was probably maybe not the smartest move, but we just wanted to get it out there because our players were like, where is this new game? You guys have been talking about it for a while. So we released it probably over a year ago at this point, but we didn't really do any sort of ad campaign or anything until like July of this year. And we kind of did a relaunch with like all the features in the game. So July 4th, I would say of this year is when it really came out.
Yeah. I mean, that's about it. Last thing that I also didn't ask you, which is probably something I should ask you in the beginning. What are your majors? Because you guys said that you want to searching for a job now.
Yeah, if there are any employers out there, major is political science, and then my minor was public affairs at UCLA.
I study computer science at Stanford University.
Cool. So, but do you guys live in the same city?
No.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes we grew up together in New York, but most of the development was all remote, so we would meet on Skype almost every night some days.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing as well, because working remote, meeting on Skype, so to say, because I would need, if I wanted to create a game, I would have to do that, because as I said, I cannot find a lot of people here, even though I have one friend who is working for Warframe. If you saw the game, yeah, all the best selling characters are his. So so it's a really cool dude. But yeah, he has a job over there and takes a lot of time. Right. So yeah, I would have to do something like that as well. And this is a very, very nice example for people watching this video or hearing it. If I decide to put this on iTunes, and if I make it actually to a podcast, that you can actually collaborate with another person online and create your game. Just you need to be in a sequence. You need to be, on the same page together. So yeah, basically that was it, guys. Thank you very much for participating, for joining. It was a very, very nice conversation. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I learned, like, I can just imagine people watching this, how they're going to benefit. Uh, tell your social media, your website, whatever. I will also put the link down below. I will put the link down below as well. But if something like it's a catchy name that people can just type, but I will put all the links below for your guys' Facebook, your website, your games, for people to download, especially for you, Matthew, because you plan to start a YouTube channel to teach people game development. So I will link that in the description below as well.
Yeah, so I would say if you want to play our games on iOS, you could type in No Stranger with no spaces. That's our game on iOS. On Android, No Stranger again, or our new game, MSA Intern. And then if you're interested in learning about how to make games, you could check out my channel. Just search Matthew Ventures on YouTube or click the link in the description.
And link will be in the descriptions. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for participating.
And my name's Scott Mulligan.
Yeah. I was like, he stole everything.
You can find me on YouTube at Scott Mulligan. I post very infrequently, but feel free and drop your name or whatever and say hi. I just want to thank you so much for this interview. It means a lot for you to be exposing and not exposing, but allowing indie developers to tell their story and share their experiences, because I think it's really useful to younger people or even older people who are interested in game development. So thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
We'll definitely share this video on our Twitter so people can learn about your channel and hopefully hear stories of other developers just like us.
Yeah, it's weird, as you said, it's weird that nobody was doing this before. I mean, you can find some interviews like with I don't know, directors from AAA companies, but not directly from indie developers, where you can actually learn from normal people, not people with millions and millions of dollars of budget creating a game. So real people who are struggling, like I am, like you guys are, like people watching this video and they want to, just live their passion, create games. So yeah, I mean, I will put all the links again, guys. You can download the games, check their channels, their Twitter, everything that I put down below. And thank you again. Thank you very much for joining. And I will talk to you. I mean, again, it will be no issue. So thank you very much, guys.
Catch you later. Bye.
See ya.